Valentine's Day is right around the corner and you want to do something special for your significant other. And all the restaurants are booked. So why not get extra brownie points and make them a romantic dinner yourself? I'm going to teach you how to make a New York steak dinner. And we're going to do potatoes and broccolini, and we're going to bring it up a notch with a few ingredients. And my significant other happens to not be here today, so I'm going to share it with someone else. Okay, so we're going to start by roasting a whole head of garlic for the vinaigrette. Slice about 1/4 inch off the top and place it root down on a piece of foil paper. Add some olive oil and wrap it up nice and tightly so the steam doesn't get out. Set your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and place it in there for 40 minutes, and after that, bust a move. While that's going, we're going to go ahead and start slicing the garlic chips for the garnish / crunchy flavor that we're adding to the broccolini. Only slice them halfway so that you don't slice your finger off while doing it. Once you have about 1/4 cup of that, add a cup of olive oil and set it to medium heat. Then add your garlic slices and start moving them around. Make sure you don't stop, because they will stick. You're going to see the color start changing as the temperature comes up, and it happens very, very fast. Once they start turning brown, tilt the pan to finish it off for a few more seconds. Then place all the contents on a sheet pan with a paper towel to drain. Place them in a small container using tongs or a fork and set it aside for later. On to the broccolini. Add some olive oil, and this is going to help with the coating so that the seasoning can stick. Move them around, making sure they are all covered in oil evenly. Then add some salt from up high and close and some cracks of black pepper. Place it in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. Your garlic should be done now, so pull that out and make sure it cools down a little bit. Then start unwrapping it. You'll see that it's nice and roasted and soft. While the garlic is still warm, squeeze out all of that gooey goodness onto a bowl. Make sure you get as much of it as you can without any pieces of the skin falling in the bowl. To the bowl, we're going to add a tablespoon of white wine vinegar, 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. You can use whole grain or regular, it's up to you. A 1.5 tablespoons of honey, and since I made a mess, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands. Season it with salt, a few turns of black pepper, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Mix it all up and make sure it's incorporated and set it aside. Pull the broccolini out and make sure the florets are roasted but not burnt. Keep it warm in the oven, turned off with the light on. Now, for the potatoes, I'm using fingerling potatoes because I like the color and they look really nice cut in half. Place those in a medium-sized pot and fill it with cold water. The cold water is going to allow the potatoes to cook evenly as the temperature of the water rises. Make sure you season the water with some salt. Bam! To a cold pan on medium heat, add olive oil and 1/2 cup of pancetta. You're going to cook this down slowly to render the fat. This process gets the fat out and keeps the pancetta nice and crispy. Stir it around constantly, and when it's golden brown, go ahead and remove it while keeping all the fat in the pan. That fat is what we'll use to brown the potatoes. When the potatoes are fork tender, strain them. Once they are cool enough to handle, slice them in half a long ways. This is going to create a large surface for the browning, and it makes your plating look pro. Slice all the potatoes carefully and make sure you do not damage the skins. To a pan on medium heat, add a drizzle of olive oil. Once it's warm, place the potatoes in there, cut side down. Season it with salt and pepper and move them around to make sure they don't stick. After 2 minutes, add the butter and pancetta in. This is going to elevate the flavor, but also it will help with adding more color to the potatoes. While the butter is melting, move them around and flip them to make sure they are all golden brown. Move the pan around to make sure none of them are stuck. Place them in the oven with the light on along with the broccolini to keep them warm. For the steak, make sure you pull them out about 15 minutes before cooking time so that they can come to room temperature. That will give you an even cook. We're going to start by adding a generous amount of salt because you gotta season your shit. Make sure it's seasoned on all sides. So pick up the steak and dab it around to make sure you get salt on all the edges. Set your pan on high and add a good amount of olive oil to the bottom. Wait until the oil is smoking, that way you know it's at the right temperature to sear the steak. Place the steak down slowly and sear on the first side for 2.5 minutes. Flip the steaks and sear the other side for 2 minutes. It should have a nice brown crust and it should not be pale. Add the garlic, thyme, and butter. While the butter is melting, grab the steak and sear on all sides to render the fat. Move the aromatics to one side, tilt the pan, and start basting the steaks with the butter using a spoon. Do this for another minute or so. Then, flip it one last time to check for doneness. It should be a little firm in the middle and spring back up quickly. Place it on a tray and add a little more butter on top. Let it rest for 5 minutes before we plate. To a plate, add some balsamic glaze on the bottom. Spread it on the plate with a spoon in a half-moon motion. Place a few pieces of broccolini on the side, and then carefully place a steak on top of your glaze. Then add a few potatoes, adding the pancetta on top. Then to the broccolini, add the vinaigrette and the garlic chips. And lastly, some cracked black pepper on top of the steak. Alright, and that's it. If this doesn't work, I don't know what will.